Right, so that's basically the title. I didn't have to think too long for this title because that's pretty much what I've been thinking, just regarding all the things going on in the past few years. So this whole thing started with this report, was done by this Pew Research Center in collaboration with AAAS. AAAS is American Association for the Advancement of Science. So they have memberships. So a lot of members, I think every members basically are scientists of some sort. So they did it, it published in 2015, but the majority of the work was done in 2014. The focus of this research is on comparing public and the scientists' view on science and the society. And I just want to give a little bit basics about what they did. So they surveyed, basically they phone interviewed about 2,000 general public. So those people they selected are 18 years or older, so they're adults, and they live in all 50 United States and also the DC area. So it's pretty widespread. And also they're not all white. So I look at demographics, there are a lot of, but it's pretty diverse. And for AAAS scientists, they had about 3,700 scientists responded, and they are in diverse disciplines, not only biology, but chemistry, math, and social studies, and engineering. All those are included. All those members they selected in their study, in their analysis, are US-based. So then we look at what they found. It was very interesting. First of all, they said there are certain things general public and the scientists do agree with each other. First, they agree on the positive side of it is scientists did accomplish a lot in very important fields. So that's very encouraging. But there are also negative things they agree on. They are all very critical on the quality of the STEM education in K-12 in the United States. Okay, so those are the things they agreed on. However, there are a lot of things they don't agree on. Although you're looking at the same United States, but they generated very different tales. So here is a table I kind of summarized some of the highlights. Scientists and the general public, they have very, very different opinions on. So we're not going through the list, but that's basically a trigger for me to think, why do us as people perceive the same world differently? So first thing I thought of is, well, this is a survey on science. Do we even agree what science is about? So here is a screenshot I got from Encyclopedia. So you can see there is a description about science, but two things I want to highlight here. One is unbiased observations. The other is systematic experimentations. So these two really stood out for me when I read it. I was wondering if they had a question about science and then have a multiple choice of many different descriptive words with these two in there, how many people would actually choose these two, right? So that was my question when I read their report. I think really have a common ground to start with would be better for a scientific study. Then we think about bias. So where does bias come from in general? One part of it I read is basically there is some intrinsic bias that we really don't have a lot of control over when we grow up. For example, the life events from family dynamics, the friends you have, and then the education you received, the culture you grow up with, or the social contact, I think I misspelled contact, sorry, or some other things, just as you grow up, you encounter the environment you live in. So those are the things, as we grow up, we were kids, we kind of just perceive it. We're very passive, we just perceive it. But that, in fact, that really affects us as we see the world day by day. And then the other part of it, I think, is conscious choice of each one of us. So that leads to basically the comparison of subjectivity versus objectivity. Right? For subjectivity, it comes very natural for us because we're human. If there's something we care about, we are emotionally attached to it. We have a liking versus disliking already. For example, I like chocolate. I just think chocolate is good. However, if you look at the studies out there, they can tell you what type of chocolate might be better than another. In general, if you eat too much, it's not good for you. So then should I just go with what I like, or I should consider what the study tells me? So that differentiates either I'm subjective or objective toward chocolate. Right? And one thing I want to say is scientists, they're not this very secret society or the superhero, when I was a kid I thought of. Because they are just human beings. And then they can be subjective when they basically don't think about science. They can be mom and dad, they can be daughter and son, they can be friends, they can be anybody you run into anywhere, outside. So they don't have to be scientists all the time. And then scientists is only a part of their identity. So that means if they're not practicing science, they could be very well subjective. So I think this is very important because a lot of times if you see news articles, they will say such and such scientist said that or did that. Well, did they ask whether that scientist really had the scientific mind when they did it or when they said it? We don't know. It was only a part of their identity, may not be carried over when that incident happens. So then I come to systematic experimentation. So that in science, it means you need to have proper controls. So that means you need to have a background that allow what you focus on stand out. You cannot have a red shirt expecting a red flower can be appreciated from a distance. That's basically what it is. And then it needs to have a large sample size. That's because if you only look at one thing, it could be a happy accident. How do you know everybody will behave the same way, just like what you see in this one incident? You don't know, right? Larger the sample size is more representative to be generalized in a larger population. So usually when we do science, we go through an inquiry process that always starts with evidence. It's not just one day I came out of shower, I think, oh, I want to see, whether my flower can bloom today, right? I kind of have to go, well, it's December. I don't think my flower is going to bloom because the evidence has told me every year, December, it's just freezing, right? So that's a general thing I think any scientist would learn at the very beginning. However, with all those things considered, we also have to think we're human beings. If we are doing any experiments related to human or any animals, we have to think about the ethics. Maybe scientifically, this experiment is very sound, it's very important. However, that involves some suffering or some compromise of human privacy, identity, or health, then we have to think about it, for a second. So I don't want to run through this as a lecture, but these are basically the steps we would go through when we do a scientific experiment. You can see evidence is the number one we have to start with. And then you can also see hypotheses come out several times. So we generate a hypothesis based on the evidence. Then we have to test the hypothesis. Then afterwards, we have to evaluate it, right? So you want to go through a full circle, basically. And then you start with evidence, you finish with evidence. So I was going to talk about the positive negative control of the mask I wrote in the paper. But since there was a very timely paper came out last weekend, it's also unmasked, but the title of the paper was Low-Cost Measurement of Face Mask Efficacy for Filtering Expelled Droplets During Speech. Okay, so I did a screenshot of their title, and I want to show you later on what came out of it. I think I'm not supposed to show it. Oh, here. Oh, maybe I am. So Duke Health. So this study was done by several labs collaborating together from Duke University. And then right after this paper was published, Duke Health, basically a part of Duke, they followed up with a media piece. It's called Inexpensive Accessible Device Provides Visual Proof that Masks Block Droplets. So I just want to show different ways different outlets present this piece of article. And then you look at the Washington Post. So their title is Wearing a Neck Gaiter May Be Worse Than No Mask at All, Researchers Find. And then you come with CNN. Researchers created a test to determine which masks are the least effective. I just thought by comparing all those titles, it's very interesting. You can see what the focus is for each one of them. And as you see more and more of those, the focus has shifted from the device to what's being negative, right? So I just want to very briefly introduce some key figures of this paper. So this is illustration of the setup they have. They claim it's very inexpensive, it's very easy to set up, also it's affordable, and it is. The only thing I saw from video is it needs a pretty big bench to allow all the light paths to form. So that's pretty straightforward. And then they also showed different type of masks in the gaiter and the bandana they have tried. So as in this figure you see. Then it comes to the $1 million figure, result figure, right? So you see, okay, on the x-axis, they have all these different types of masks they tested. On the y-axis, they have relative droplet counts. So relative to 1, this 1.0, if you see, is this green dot. That is when the person wear no mask, right? So in the framework of scientific study, this no mask would be a control, a negative control, right? When you don't have any mask. This fitted N95 would be positive control, because this is known that N95 blocks the best, is the safest, right? And then that means everything else would be what you want to test, okay? And then you also see those error bars. Basically, there is a range of relative droplet counts they tested through different trials. And of course, when this paper was published, and then very, very quickly, media picked it up, and then they make people focus on the very right-hand side, the 3 different samples, bandana, no mask, and the fleece. If you look at it, there is a reason for it, because you can see how high of the droplet count the bandana and the fleece are comparing to the no mask, because their variation basically overlap with that mask. So that brought up a lot of concerns right now. A lot of people are talking about it. So then should we have those gaiters for students, right? And then when we see people wearing gaiters, should we consider it's safe to get close to them? And then should people even wear those? So a lot of questions have stirred up. I have received several emails in the past few days about this as well. So one thing I found out is, if you go back to this figure, number 12 is the neck fleece they used to test it. This is the image they gave us. However, in their method, they never said how they worn it. Did they wear it like this or just single layered? They never said it. I'm pretty sure they knew how they did it. They just forgot to mention. Right? So, but that's such an important technical detail right now in order for people to see. If for multi-layer still it doesn't work, then that will be a big trouble. If a single layer, it doesn't work very well, then people can ask, well, can we just layer it up? Right, so that becomes a very interesting question. I hope they address that in the future very soon. Right, so throughout this process, I think it's very interesting because everybody is involved, because we're all trying to figure out what's the safest way for us to interact with others when we go out to work, when we go grocery shopping, right? So that means we are all kind of like scientists right now if we want to be, right? So that comes to conscious choice, like each of us can make. We can say, well, I like the one that make me breathe better. But does that option also keep you safer? Is there any evidence? But I have to say, unfortunately, not a lot of evidence out there, because doing science, it takes time. It takes trial and error. So maybe after a few months, we'll have more evidence. But as of now, all of us are in a gigantic experiment. Doesn't matter we like it or not. And then since we're all in it, we need to use whatever evidence we can find to help us decide what choice we are going to make. Because this is not a piece of chocolate, it's our life. Yeah. But at the same time, I don't want to make scientists sound like super serious. Actually, we're all human, right? We also have community we hang out with. We actually bond with each other. So it's pretty interesting when people think about scientists. They have those kind of very, very different image about scientists. But actually, we're not. We're just one of everybody else. And at the same time, every person can be a scientist because we have this ability within ourselves. We just have to wake up to it and then make conscious choice for what we want to do. That's basically what my paper says. I'm welcoming any comments, any discussions.